Hey guys, my name is Brandon Aruda. I'm a new civil engineer who graduated in 2020. And I started out my career in structural engineering. This is going to be my top 10 tips for new structural engineers. Okay, number 1. It's kind of obvious, but no AutoCAD. A lot of times AutoCAD is kind of left for a civil engineer, like the civil side of things, or your draftsman, and odds are you'll have a draftsman in your first structural engineering job. But even if you're not doing the drafting, it's still important to know AutoCAD because it gives you an idea of when you're designing, you have a place where you can go draw things in a scale of 1:1 and see if things are fitting as you're designing. So something that I would always use it for is like a reinforced concrete design. Sometimes you're fitting a lot of bars in these beams or columns, and you want to make sure that what you're designing can actually be constructed. So to avoid a contractor coming back to me and asking, hey, I can't fit these anchor bolts where you specified because we have rebar in the way. When you're designing, if you're drafting as you're designing, you'll be able to catch these things. Another thing is you can use I usually stick to a 2D model. A 2D landscape for AutoCAD, but you can definitely jump into 3D and that's going to help you even more in design because sometimes these things can get a little complicated. All right, tip number 2, get to know Excel. I know a lot of you are leaving college and you think you know Excel best you can, but I would say not just learn Excel, but learn how to work in an Excel document that you could print. So use Excel in a way that you can Control P, print the document, and you're gonna get like this very neat report. And I'll put up a template I used to use for Excel for my designs that I thought was very helpful, and it gave you the value, whether it was an input, not an input, where I'm getting that value from, so the references, and it would give a brief description on what that value is. So if you're putting B, generally because of school, B is probably width of the beam, but I like to see exactly what it is. I don't like it when you leave things to guesswork. So I would say, get to know Excel and get used to using Excel. Maybe not just as a spreadsheet. Use it as almost like a robust design document compiler. I don't know. Again, I'll put my template. That way you guys can get an idea of what I'm describing here. So number 3, get a format that works. So going back to that Excel thing, maybe my format for laying out calculations isn't exactly what you would do. I would say really early in your structural career, nail down exactly what you want your calculations to look like, because you're going to be putting together a lot of these calculations, and you want these calculation packages, and you want a structured framework of how every calculation should look. That way you're not wasting time in the future messing with other people's templates or missing things that you should have added. Just create a template for yourself and just stick to it. Tip number 4, stay organized. So as a new structural engineer, there's going to be a lot of things going your way. And I would set up a working directory on you'll get a laptop or you'll have a desktop. Start a working directory on your local drive or your computer. And make sure you have it all organized. Where are you putting your projects? What are your projects? Have a library. That you're kind of starting. Just stay organized file wise, because again, there's going to be a lot of files flooding your way, and you want to know where they all are, what they all mean, and you don't want to be scrambling for a certain project when your boss asks. All right, tip number 5: you're a new structural engineer. You're tasked with a new set of design calcs from your senior engineer. I would say have a deep discussion with your senior engineer about all the questions you might have before starting your calculations. Then when you start the calcs, maybe you just laid out you opened up your template you already have, made a quick few you've done the kind of all the surface work to it without going too deep. Maybe you spent an hour or two on it. I would say set up another discussion with your senior engineer and just make sure you're on the right path in the calcs. Make sure you're using the right, you're referencing the right codes right away, early on. Make sure you're really understanding what they're asking you to analyze, and this will save you a lot of headache in the long run. Just doing this little extra step will save you. Number 6, again, kind of going back to the file organization, but I'd say start a library. Make one of your directories a library. And all that library is going to be is where you keep all your reference documents, your PDFs. It's pretty common to have, you can have your physical books, but you're going to accrue PDFs. You want a place to put them all because you're going to want to constantly be going back to them in the future. So a good example is like material catalogs. You might be looking up like a certain anchor bolt specification or a certain anchor bolt catalog for one project. A year from now, that same material, that same anchor bolt might pop back up, and it'll save yourself some time. You're not gonna have to go back and look for that catalog if you already have it on your in your library. So again, keep an organized library of any PDFs that you're kind of accruing, and so you can reference them because you'll be referencing similar documents all the time. Number 7. Save your work. This is kind of obvious, but once you do so if you do a reinforced concrete beam calculation a year ago, you want to know exactly where you saved that, because your boss might look at you tomorrow and be like, "Hey, we have a reinforced concrete beam that needs to be designed, and you've done a similar design in the past. You know exactly where that is." You can save yourself a lot of the legwork with an Excel document. You can copy, paste it, and obviously analyze, make sure it's doing exactly what you want it to do. But you save yourself a lot of the upfront work. Another example is, maybe you have a junior engineer below you who's doing similar work, and he needs a little guidance. Well, you have this Excel document you set up, and that, I wouldn't let them copy it, but I would give it to them as like a guideline. Of a way. This is how we typically solve these problems, analyze these structures, that sort of stuff. Tip number 8, and this is something I learned very early on, and I'm glad I did, but take things slow. Don't rush things. If your boss gives you a template to his template on a design that he wants you to complete, don't copy his work mindlessly in an effort to save time on the project. You're going to be hurting yourself in the long run. You're not going to be confident with what's on the page. And when questions come up, you're going to be on the hot seat. You really want to take your time, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you know what's going on the paper, and make sure you have a good understanding of what you're analyzing. Again, that's kind of going back to your discussions with the senior engineer early along. That way you can make sure that you really understand what's going on, eliminate mistakes, and be confident of what you're presenting, and what you're putting together. So yeah, I would say take things slow and don't rush. So tip number 9, do your drafting in tandem with your designs. So you might have a draftsman, you might not need to do your own drafting, but basically if you're going to draw it on paper, I recommend drawing in AutoCAD, and do this while you're designing. So if I'm designing a beam, kind of goes back to my tip number 1, but if you're designing a beam, draw all the reinforcing in there, draw your anchors in AutoCAD, draw them where you think they should be, and that will give you a good idea of exactly what you're designing. Because not everything pops up when you're doing all your strength checks and your serviceability checks. There are some things that just, there are different sort of checks. You want to make sure that your rebar isn't too close to some of your anchor bolts, and is this even constructible? And this is stuff you'll be able to pick up if you're just drawing it in AutoCAD. So use AutoCAD. It's your best friend while designing. whether you're a structural engineer and a draftsman, or just an engineer. Another thing it helps you out with is if you're not the draftsman, if you're drawing while you're designing, you already have essentially what you want drafted. Give them to the draftsman. Ask him to draft it up to you with all the CAD standards he knows. And basically, you can use your own drawings as a check to make sure that he's kind of captured everything that you want in there. So it'll save you a lot in the checking. It'll save you a lot in the design phase. It's overall just a great thing to do. I started doing it and I never looked back. So yeah, tip number 9: do drafting in tandem while designing. All right. Tip number 10: keep all your old structural books. You might be thinking, if I have the newest steel manual, I'm not going to need the last edition. I'm not going to need the first edition. There's no way I'm going to need those because I have the latest and the greatest. That's not always true. You might not want to be doing today's designs using old reference manuals, but sometimes you want to know, for example, the capacity of a connection built in the 1950s. Well, those connections might have been designed were designed per 1950s codes. So you might want to check those connections capacities using those codes. And so you might want to do that because you want to know the capacity that they were designed for. I don't know, but I know in my job, using old references used to come up all the time. So it's definitely something you want to do. Don't throw away your old books just because you get a new one. Another thing, you might want to give them to the younger engineers too. I know a lot of offices have like built-up libraries where we have a ton of documents. But as we all kind of move to working from home, you probably want to start your own little library at home. Same thing with PDFs. Don't just hit the delete button just because you have the newest one. All right, so yeah, those are my top 10 tips for new structural engineers. I hope they help you as much as they helped me. Thank you. Have a great day.